Good evening. The Municipality of Anchorage Platting Board will now come to order. It is March 4th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. May we have a roll call?
Valerie Ritz.
Present.
Valerie Ritz.
Present.
Clayton Walker.
Present.
Kevin Cross.
Present.
Mark Seward.
Present.
Jenna Weltzing.
Present.
Becky Lipson.
Present.
Don Porter is excused. Thank you.
And the next item of business is approvals. We have a summary of action from Wednesday, February 5th, 2020. We have a motion approving the action summaries. Becky Lipson has moved and Kevin Cross has seconded. Is there any opposition to approving the action summary? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. Next, we'll turn to the minutes from Wednesday, February 5th, 2020. May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Valerie Ritz has moved and Kevin Cross has seconded. Are there any items on the minutes that need to be amended or changed? Any additions to be made? Seeing none, is there any opposition to approving the minutes? Seeing no opposition, the minutes are approved. We'll now turn our attention to special order of business. And are there any disclosures to be made for tonight's hearings? Seeing no board members that need to make any disclosures, that issue is addressed. And we'll now turn to informational items. We have an abbreviated plat summary from May 10th, 2020. It is that time of year where we have the annual election for officers. Our officers, we have two, a chairperson and the vice chair. And I have nominations for those two positions. Jenna Weltzin, would you please state your nominations?
I would nominate Clay Walker for chair and Kevin. Now I'm just forgetting your. No, now I'm just forgetting your. Cross. Thank you for spelling that out. Kevin Cross for co-chair or vice chair.
And Becky Lipson has seconded your motion. Are there any other nominations to be made this evening? Nobody brave enough? Seeing no other nominations, I guess we'll close the nominations and we'll take a vote. Okay. And the motion is passed. So the record will reflect that Clayton Walker has been voted for chairperson and Kevin Cross as vice chair for the year 2020. Next, we will turn our attention to the Platting Board meets each month on the first and third Wednesday, except holidays, as regular meetings. If the Platting Board fails to complete our agenda tonight, we'll carry over the remainder of the agenda to the next following meeting. The procedure by which the public is allowed to speak at the Platting Board is after the staff's presentation is complete on public hearing items. I will ask for public testimony on the issue. People wishing to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedure. The petitioner and their representative are given 10 minutes. They may reserve part of their time for rebuttal. Representatives of the community councils and PTAs are given 5 minutes each, and individuals are given 3 minutes each. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board, and you may only testify once unless the board questions you further on a matter. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by Anchorage Municipal Code 21.11.304. The decision the Board makes at this public hearing will become final 7 days after the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Platting Board prior to the expiration of those 7 days asking for a written decision to be made on the hearing, and that request is made with an accompanied by a notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision on the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written notice alleging new evidence or changed circumstances under Anchorage Municipal Code 21.11.503, or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision under 2130. With that, we'll now turn our attention to new business and take up the matter of S12518, Olympus Subdivision, Block 9, Lot 23A, 31A, and 32A. May we have staff's presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request to subdivide 6 lots into 4 lots with vacation of a 50-foot right-of-way along East Zoo Circle and variances from AMC 2108-030F6, which is cul-de-sacs, to exceed 600 feet in length for a cul-de-sac measuring approximately 682 feet, and AMC 2108-050G, H, and I, improvements from Class A design standards to construct vertical curb and gutters, pedestrian facilities, and street lighting to match the existing standards of West 99th Avenue. This request is being made to allow for the consolidation of lots so that roads and utilities can be constructed to provide developable residential lots in Anchorage. The petition site is surrounded by R1 single-family residential development to the north and west. The property is bounded by West 100th to the south and Minnesota Drive to the east. The proposed lots meet the minimum lot size and width required by the R1 zoning district, and there were no objections by the reviewing agencies to vacation of the 50-foot wide right-of-way. In the matter of the variance request, we'll split those up between 1, the cul-de-sac length variance, and the improvements from Class A design standards. So AMC 2103-240G3 is the approval criteria which needs to be met. And in the matter of the cul-de-sac length, that standard is substantially met. The Department of Transportation acquired several of the lots within the Olympus subdivision for Minnesota Drive and West 100th Avenue. This restricted access along these corridors to the subdivision, and the proposed plat keeps the intent of the original subdivision. For Standard B, the standard is substantially met for cul-de-sacs. Adequate vehicle circulation appears to be provided within the proposed Olympus subdivision connecting to West 99th Avenue. Vehicle access from Zeus Drive and Circle keeps the intent of the original subdivision. In the matter of Standard C, that's substantially met. This intent is to ensure cul-de-sacs are not excessively long in order to facilitate safe and effective access to the proposed lots. The proposed Olympus subdivision cul-de-sac exceeds the standard by 82 feet, or roughly 12%, which appears to be the minimum additional length required to provide access. Standard D, denial of the variance could make future development of the property infeasible to develop. The vacation of the right-of-way and variance to cul-de-sac length provide a viable and adequate access to the subject and surrounding properties. Now back to the second variance, which is the improvements from Class A design standards. That's the curb, gutter, pedestrian facilities, and street lightings. For Standard A, it's substantially met. However, street lighting is not met. It would be impractical to build sidewalks that do not connect through the connecting streets or curb and gutter drainage infrastructure where the neighborhood drainage system was not designed to support it. The traffic department recommends street lighting be installed with the development of the subdivision at the proposed intersections where the rights of way change direction. This will improve safety at these intersections. The matter of Standard B, that's substantially met. However, once again, street lighting is not met. The granting of the variance for curb and gutter with sidewalks will not adversely affect public welfare. The variance will provide a road to be built for the subdivision and allow Zeus Drive to match that of the existing and surrounding roads. Street lighting, however, provides additional security, improvements, and safety with the development of the neighborhood. Standard C, that standard is substantially met. However, street lighting is not met. Granting the variance will not have an effect of nullifying the intent of the subdivision standards. Once the construction of Zeus Drive and the associated turnaround at Zeus Circle, it'd still be subject to an improvement to public place agreement. The subdivision standards require street lighting for safety, however, and granting a variance to that standard would nullify the intent of the requirement, staff feels. In the final matter of D, that standard is substantially met, and once again, street lighting is not met. So strict compliance with the requirements would create undue hardship, as the number of lots created would not be proportionate to full street standards. It would not be financially feasible for the 4-lot subdivision. Staff does feel, though, that the installation of street lighting would not create an undue hardship for the developer and the property, and is necessary minimum for safety and security within the neighborhood. So traffic department and private development both recommend approval of the variances from cul-de-sac length, standard to pedestrian facilities, and to not construct curb and gutter. But staff is recommending denial of the variance for improvements for street lighting. In the matter of the vacation request, the petitioner is requesting vacation of 50 feet of right-of-way for that portion along East Sioux Circle within the subdivision. That's between lots 32A and 25A. And that proposed subdivision, that right-of-way will be incorporated into both lots. And that's basically where it was supposed to tee into Minnesota Boulevard. So that vacation request has been reviewed and found to conform to the municipal vacation policy. Standard 1. The right-of-way vacation is to clean up an area within Olympus subdivision that was acquired by the state of Alaska in the late 70s with restricted access anyhow to those lots. The surrounding lots and the proposed lots will all have access to, from Zeus Drive, so the right-of-way is surplus. Standard 2, right-of-way is not listed on the official streets and highways plan. Standard 3, it's not lying on the half-mile grid. Standard 4, it's not lying on the quarter-mile grid. Standard 5, this vacation will not have any impact on traffic circulation. The existing street network and right-of-way to the north at West 99th Avenue, it'll provide adequate access to all those lots. In Standard 6, the vacation and platting action will have the effect of cleaning up and reconfiguring an area that was impacted by the construction of Minnesota Drive and West 100th Avenue. Private development, right-of-way, and the municipal traffic department stated there's no objection to that vacation of the right-of-way. Therefore, staff believes that the right-of-way is an excessive municipal need and recommends approval of the vacation, subject to the conditions found on page 12 and 13 of the staff packet. However, there's been a slight change into the enter into a public place agreement. So on page 13, condition number 3, that should read 20 feet wide and 10 feet, of which, so we're changing the two numbers from down to 20 feet and 10 feet. And then in 3B, improve Zeus Drive as a 20-foot strip paved road with 2-foot shoulders. There was the supplemental packet for 12518 also outlines the comments from private development that reflect that change. So to reiterate, we recommend approval of the 50-foot right-of-way vacation, approval of the variance for the cul-de-sac length, curbs and gutters, pedestrian facilities, denial of the street lighting, and then approval of the plat with the change in 3A and B. And that's just going to be the 20 feet, 24 feet down back to 20 feet, and then a 10 feet should be on the north half of right-of-way. Yeah, I'm here to answer any questions, and the petitioner's representative here as well.
Just to clarify, in 3A, you're wanting to change 24 feet wide to 10 feet wide.
No, so it'll read, the west leg of the hammerhead shall be minimum of 20 feet wide, 10 feet of which shall be within the north half of the right-of-way, such that the future westerly extension of Zeus Circle will be centered within the right-of-way.
Right.
And then B is we're changing that first. Improve Zeus Drive as a 20-foot strip paved with 2-foot shoulders.
Okay.
And that change came about here at the last minute, so that's why we were able to change the staff packet.
Why the change from 24 down to 20?
Private development changed their comments, and I believe that's to match the existing right-of-way that's out there.
Right. Are there any other questions for staff at this time? May we have petitioner's representative?
Good evening. I'm Dave Hale, H-A-L-E, with R&M. I'm representing the petitioners HLB and P&A LLC. P&A owns existing lots 31 and 32. HLB owns the rest. So they're teaming up on this.
Thank you. Did you want to reserve some of your time for rebuttal?
I do, whatever's remaining.
Okay.
I was just going to say a couple things if I could.
Thank you.
So in regards to the variance request, the intent of this subdivision was completed in the 70s. It's been kind of slowly developed over time. If you go out there and you drive the thing, it's just road, and it's paved road, but it's not that wide. There's some old houses. People have been living there for a long time. So when we go in and we develop these other lots, we really want to maintain the character of the neighborhood. We don't want to go in there and, put super highways in and affect everybody. So really, all of these variance requests are intended to match into the existing conditions and to maintain the character. And the petitioners have no issue with installing the lights. So that added requirement is fine. We can do that. In regard to the vacation request, we've touched base with the ADOT, the Department of Transportation. There's no access going to be allowed to Minnesota from there. So shutting that off actually will keep local traffic only on those roads. And I surveyed out there, there's kids running around all over the place out there. So it's good that it's not a through traffic area. So that vacation request will kind of tidy that up, and it'll keep local traffic only. And we also have been working with the planning and traffic and private development on the condition of the width of the road. And the roads that are existing out there are 20-foot roads. And so, again, we want to match into those, and we don't want to do anything that's going to affect the character. So we'd like to build 20-foot roads instead, and we discussed it with private development, and they agreed. So if you guys approved those changes to 3A and 3B to 20-foot wide roads, then we will have no objection to the recommendations. And that's all I have.
Okay.
I can answer your questions.
Are there any questions for Dave Hale? Mark Seward.
Through the chair, Mr. Hale, did I understand you say that on the street lighting request is that the owner is willing to do that? Or
Through
not?
the chair, yes, Mr. Seward. There's two lights that are going to be one at 99th and one down at the other corner, and they're perfectly willing to do that. They think it's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. That answers both of mine.
If he's okay with that, we just need to vote on E. Or do we still have to vote and shoot it down? He's not asking for it, so we need to vote on something that's not being requested. Yeah, we'll go ahead and bring it up and kill it. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Are there any members of the community councils or PTAs? Are there any members of the public that wish to speak tonight? Seeing no one else that would like to speak on the matter, would you like to use some time in rebuttal? And your time in rebuttal has been waived. With that, we will close the public hearing, and the matter now rests with the board. May I have a motion to approve the request for vacation of a 50-foot right-of-way? Kevin Cross, would you please state your motion?
In regards to case S12518 Olympus subdivision, lots 23A, 25A, 3132, Block 9, I move to approve the request for the vacation or elimination of the 50-foot right-of-way located between lots 32A and 25A, subject to 1, recording a suitable plat within 24 months.
Thank you, and Valerie Ritz has seconded your motion. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, reiterating the criteria for a variance request as stated through pages 7, 8, 9, and 10. The petitioner has met those requirements. I'd also like to state that the Zeus Drive that we're eliminating that emptied out onto Minnesota Drive, this neighborhood that was originally developed in the 70s, I don't think that they understood the caliber of which Minnesota has become, and having a residential neighborhood dump into that arterial that exits the Minnesota off-ramp onto 100th is probably a poor design, considering that it's probably less than 100 feet from the roundabout. So eliminating that is actually an improvement to public safety, and we can use the other existing approved access routes.
Thank you. Any other findings the board would like to make on this matter? Is there any opposition to the motion on the floor? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. May we have a motion to approve the variance from AMC 2108-030F6A on the cul-de-sac link? Kevin Cross, would you please state your motion?
In the case S12518 Olympus subdivision, I move to approve the variance from AMC 21.08.030F6A cul-de-sacs to exceed, this cul-de-sac shall exceed 600 feet in length for a cul-de-sac measuring approximately 682 feet, subject to 1, recording a suitable plat within 24 months.
Thank you. And Jana Welton has seconded your motion. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I'd like to state that the public safety did not have any approved of this. They did not deem it to be profuse in his request and for fire truck access. And it stands that it's actually the best use of the lot to allow that to extend. There is still an adequate cul-de-sac for turnaround for fire and safety. There will also be lighting for fire and safety. And that's a natural incline since we are eliminating the access off Zeus Drive. I believe if we had not approved the vacation and it had accessed off Minnesota, we would have been less than 600. But unfortunately, we create more danger by allowing access on the Minnesota than we do by allowing an extension of 82 feet.
Thank you. Any other findings that the board would like to offer? Seeing none, is there any opposition to the motion on the floor? No opposition, the motion passes. Next, we'll consider approval of variance from AMC 2108-050G, the curbs and gutters. Kevin Cross, would you like to state a motion?
In the case S12518 Olympus subdivision, I move to approve the variance from AMC 21.08.050G curbs and gutters to construction type 1 curbs and gutters on all streets, conditioned upon recording a suitable plat within 24 months.
And Becky Lipsum has seconded your motion. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, this is a common variance that we actually give. Understand under Title 21 that there's a recommendation for type 2 curb and gutter, but then we end up in a situation where you have an old neighborhood with older curb and gutter and then a newer one and tie it into another older, and it ends up being inconsistent. Ends up creating issues where you have a sidewalk, then no sidewalk, and then sidewalk and no sidewalk. So it's just common practice for us to approve anything that matches.
Thank you. Any other findings the board would like to make? Seeing none, is there any opposition? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. May we have a motion to approve the variance from AMC 2108-050H with respect to pedestrian facilities? Kevin Cross, would you like to state a motion?
In regards to case number S12518 Olympus subdivisions, lots 23, 25, 31, 32, block 9. Again, approval from the variance AMC 21.005 pedestrian facilities to provide sidewalks, walkways, trails, and pathways, subject to recording a plat within 24 months.
And Becky Lipsum has seconded your motion. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, this is kind of a continuation of the approval of the previous request and variance for curbs and gutters. It's just stating that we're allowing for the variance of the sidewalks and walkways. Not only that, because we're dealing with a very specific width of 50 foot, and then as you can see further on, we approve it at 20 foot wide, and then 2 feet of foot shoulders and ditches on either side. We have an older neighborhood. We're just matching and being consistent with the other with the rest of the roads and the sidewalks in the neighborhood.
Any opposition to the motion on the floor? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. We'll now turn to the issue on the street lighting. There was a request for variance. I believe that variance request has been withdrawn by the petitioner, so I don't think we need to address that further. Kevin Cross.
You, Mr. Whitfield, you've got that look.
Through the chair, to the board, I don't believe that the variance has been withdrawn. I believe that the variance is still out there, so I would ask you to consider the variance.
Okay, so even though he said he's fine with putting the streetlights, you want us to?
He did not formally withdraw the request for
didn't
variance, so
formally
please
withdraw.
consider it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So with that, may we have a motion to address the issue, the request for variance? And stated as a positive motion.
Yes, so we can then vote against it. Okay, in the case of S12518 Olympus subdivision, okay, I move to approve a variance of AMC 21.08050 street lighting to provide street lighting in locations approved by the traffic engineer. So I'll be voting for, I'm moving for the variance.
Thank you. And your motion has been seconded by Becky Lipsum. Would you
Well-
like to speak to your motion?
I am not going to vote for that variance. I'm going to deny it because the petitioner said he's fine adding the streetlights, and he did not meet the criteria for obtaining a variance.
And Becky Lipson, did you want to add any additional findings on that?
No, I'm fine with what Mr. Cross said.
Okay. I would also like to make the additional finding that it's a safety item, having the lighting, and that the petitioner is in agreement that it's a safety issue that should be added. It's 2 lights, one at 99th and one at 100th. And is there any anyone else wanting to speak on the matter? With that, I'll call the vote. And the motion has failed. With that, we'll now move to request approval for the plat for 24 months with conditions. May I have a motion? Kevin Cross, would you please state a motion?
In S12518 Olympus subdivision, I move to approve the plat for 24 months subject to the following conditions. Conditions 1, conditions 2A, 2B, Condition 3A with a correction stating the second sentence shall read, the west leg of the hammerhead shall be a minimum of 20 feet wide and 10 feet of which shall be the north half of the right-of-way as such. And also 3B with a correction to say in sentence 1, approving Zeus Drive as a 20-foot strip paved road. Condition 4, condition 5A, 5B, and 5C.
Thank you, and Valerie Ritz has seconded your motion. Did you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, we didn't have any negative public comment on the development. Typically speaking, when neighbors do appear, they're very concerned about drainage. I know this area have a lot of black spruce, and in the past has had a high water table, just having been born and raised in this town and doing real estate development for years. However, I want to make sure, even though there wasn't any negative public testimony, that the property owner and utilities should not raise or lower or regrade the property in manner that alter the drainage patterns from those shown across, and they will have to work with private developers to review and approve a comprehensive site draining program. So if anybody comes in later and is concerned about this, the petitioner does have a lot of drainage work to do for an area that's notoriously got a high water table.
Thank you. Any other findings the board would like to offer? Is there any opposition to the motion on the floor? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes. I just got lucky. Okay, with that, we will now turn our attention to Case S12532, Gray Messick. May we have the staff's presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The petitioner is requesting a variance from AMC 2109-070F3, Transportation and Connectivity, Collector Street Standards, to provide a recycled asphalt paved surface 20 feet wide along Spurt Road, fronting Lot 3. Spurt Road is classified as a neighborhood collector in the official streets and highways plan and is subject to standards A through I found in AMC 2109-070F3, which is collector streets general. The petitioner states that the variance is being requested as the improvement requirements are not feasible and roadway improvements would not continue beyond Lot 3 with the continued development of existing vacant lots adjacent to Spurt Road. The majority of the parcels along Spurt Road are currently already developed. In the approval criteria for the subdivision standards, Standard A is met in part. The existing subdivision is not typical for a subdivision within a Class A area, with Spurt Road being a collector. The existing surface is a mixture of gravel and recycled asphalt pavement, or commonly known as RAP. The transition from gravel or RAP to pavement can cause long-term maintenance issues and possible damage to maintenance vehicles due to the abrupt edge created by the transition. Granting the variance to the pavement standards will maintain the existing characteristics of Spurt Road and the surrounding area. The traffic department and private development have stated there are no special circumstances or conditions affecting the property that would prevent the construction of a 5-foot separated pathway. A pedestrian pathway is desirable to the general public. In Standard B, that standard has been met in part. The granting of the variance for pavement standards will not adversely affect public welfare. The existing roadway is currently a gravel wrap surface that is approximately 20 feet wide and provides access to single-family and multifamily developments with low traffic volumes. AMC 2109-07F5D requires 5-foot pedestrian pathways for local residential streets in Girdwood. And once again, traffic and private development have stated an objection to granting a variance to the pathways as they are important to the public welfare. Standard C has been met in part. Granting a variance to the pavement standards will not have the effect of nullifying the intent of the subdivision regulations. Upgrading the section of Spurt Road to a RAP surface will meet the intent and purpose of the regulations and the Girdwood area plan by continuing connectivity to the surrounding road system. The intent of the subdivision regulations is to discourage, for safety reasons, pedestrian and vehicular conflicts wherever possible. Providing a 5-foot pathway will reduce conflicts on this portion of the roadway. In Standard D, that standard has been met in part. Undue hardship would result from strict compliance with the subdivision standard regulations for the requirement of a paved street. Strict compliance would add additional cost to the developer and ultimately passed on to the home buyers. The estimated construction cost for roadway upgrades provided by the petitioner is approximately $600,000. A cost estimate breakdown was not provided by the applicant. However, constructing a pedestrian pathway on one side of the street as required by code would benefit the project and community for safety from pedestrian and vehicle conflicts. So with that exception of the traffic department and private development's objection to the pathway and drainage requirements, reviewing agencies had no comment or no objection to the variance request. Granting the variance to paving mitigates some of the concerns about long-term maintenance cost and compatibility within the existing road section in the surrounding neighborhood. Therefore, the department recommends it's in two parts. So the department recommends approval of the request for variance from AMC 2109-070F3, A, B, and I to allow recycled asphalt pavement for Sproat Road. That's found on page 5. And on page 6, B, staff recommends denial of the variance for variance from AMC 2109-070F3C through H to not provide a 5-foot separated pathway on the development side of Sproat Road. The location of the pathway shall be resolved with prior development and the non-transportation coordinator. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and the petitioner's representative is here as well.
Does the board have any questions for staff at this time? May we have petitioner's representative?
Good evening. My name is Laquita Chmielowski. It's CHMIELOWSKI, and I'm the Land Use Planning Manager with Dow. I'm here tonight representing 3MJ Development, and we have representatives with 3MJ in the audience with me tonight. So we are here seeking a variance from the Collector Street standards for the section of Sproat that's adjacent to Lot 3. So the municipal code requires that anything over a single-family development on Lot 3 would have to bring the roadway bring Sproat to the municipal standard, which right now is a collector. And this includes 10 to 12 foot wide paved travel lanes, 3.5 to 5 foot paved shoulders on either side, 8 to 12 foot areas for drainage and snow storage, as well as pathway and landscape buffers. Sorry, I'd like to retain the remainder of my time for rebuttal. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So many things factored into the request that we have tonight. That included the existing conditions on Sproat Road, traffic that would be generated by the potential development of the site, and then long-term maintenance costs. So collector streets are really meant to collect traffic from surrounding local roads and get them out to higher classified roads. And in this case, Sproat Road really functions like a local road. There's lots of driveway access off of Sproat, and it really doesn't have any connectivity because it parallels Alyeska Highway unless you take one of the side roads. So it functions more like a local street. And to give you some context for traffic volumes, So although the municipality doesn't have traffic data for Sproat, the DOT does have data for Alyeska Highway. And so collector streets normally have 10,000 vehicles per day, but residential collectors can have lower volumes, around 2,000 vehicles per day. So Alyeska Highway is classified as a minor arterial, which normally would have 10 to 20,000 vehicles per day, and Alyeska Highway has right around 3,000. So the volumes in general are much lower than what you'd see for these typical classifications. So as staff mentioned, Sproat Road is a mixture of gravel and wrap surface, and upgrades were done in 2017 that included regrading the ditches and installing culverts. So, as I mentioned, the development of the site's what's triggering the need for the variance and the potential upgrades to Sproat. And so, although we don't know the full development, the parcel is classified or is zoned for multifamily, and based on the code, they could have up to 12 units. So to get an idea of what the traffic volumes would look like and what impacts we'd have, we use the ITE trip generation manuals to identify how many trips would be generated during the peak hour. So when you look at the surrounding area, there's approximately 20 trips that are generated in the peak hour without the development of this lot. And if we did all 12 units, you'd have an additional 7 trips. So again, the volumes are really low on this road, and the development's not adding a huge number of trips. And the municipality normally doesn't require a traffic impact analysis until you have 100 trips in the peak hour. So we're, well below that threshold. The other thing to keep in mind too is that any development on the parcel that is over 6 units or 6 units and above would require a conditional use permit process. So again, this would be a public process before Planning and Zoning Commission, and we would again have to look at the traffic impacts to the surrounding area. So Girdwood's part of a limited road maintenance service area, and what that means is that they have funds they're responsible for maintaining their roads, and there's a separate funds that are set aside for road maintenance and for upgrades. And it's our understanding that there aren't any plans to upgrade Sproat now or in the future. And so if you have this short section that's upgraded as part of this project, it's unlikely that it would be continued to be upgraded along the rest of the section through the limited road maintenance service area funding. The other way that sometimes roadways get upgraded is by continued development along the corridor. And in this case, of the 26 lots that are along Sproat, only 6 are vacant. So it's unlikely that the roadway upgrades would be continued through future development of the area. So when you have a short section that's paved adjacent to a wrap section, what can happen is that there's not a really great way to make a nice smooth transition. And so in the long term, when you look at maintaining it, when you have snow removal, what can happen is the blade hits that transition, and over time it can unravel the pavement and cause damage to the roadway at that transition point, as well as potential damage to the maintenance equipment. And in our application package, we actually had an email from the Girdwood Street maintenance staff kind of indicating that same thing, that it would has potential of increasing their cost. And any maintenance cost or equipment damage cost are, the burden of the limited road service area. So for this reason, we take no exception to staff's recommendation of the 20-foot wide paved wrap surface with 2-foot shoulders and the separated pathway adjacent to Lot 3. We feel that the traffic volumes, the existing and what potentially could be generated at the site can be adequately served by the surface that's already there and the upgrades that would be part of this project. We also believe that it also assists the limited road service area by not having potential maintenance costs for the long term. And again, it's unlikely that those full upgrades would get continued beyond this lot. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you, and you have 3 minutes and 34 seconds for rebuttal. Are there any questions for, I didn't get your name,
Laquita.
Laquita. And how do you spell the last name?
CHMIELOWSKI.
Thank you. Kevin Cross has a question for you.
What is the current road construction for, I guess, Gunnysuck and Sprout? I would have pronounced it Sprout, so but Sprout.
Yeah.
What is it now? Is it just
It's
dirt,
20-foot
gravel?
wide wrap, gravel and
Right,
wrap,
it's-
yeah.
It's currently gravel wrap?
Yep,
Okay.
yes,
And so your petition is still a slight upgrade,
correct.
but just not to the standard of under 2109 of a full paved with an engineered base. So we're improving the existing road, but with some, I see your other variances that you're asking here, and it's at least it's surface condition, but not to the standard that the other asked, which would be full pavement. Is that correct?
Yeah, it'd be full pavement with landscaping and pathways on both sides. It's a cross-section that's anywhere from 63 to 92 feet wide.
All right, excellent, thank you.
And Mark Seward.
Through the chair, Lakita. Question on this 5-foot pathway. The plat we have submitted is across the street 4A, and it looks like Lot 3 of your project is just a little bit larger, and that's roughly 165 feet wide on 4A. Is your lot probably roughly 180 or 200 or less, I think, along Sprout?
Correct.
Okay. How would that 5-foot walkway match back into the existing road at the ends of it? If I was walking up the road, would it be tapered a 45 off to the walkway at each end?
Yeah, so, I mean, we would have to look at how to taper it in, and that's one of the things we'd work with private development and traffic at the municipality to determine what that design looks like. Anything that we do design-wise has to go through them for a review and approval.
And who would do the snow removal on that? The local?
Yeah, the limited road service area is responsible for maintenance, and my understanding is that's done through contracts.
Oh, that answers them. Thank you.
Becky Lipson.
I have a very basic question, which is,
Sure.
What length of improvements are we talking about? Are we only talking about directly in front of the lot, or?
Correct. So when you take access off a road with a development, you're required to upgrade the portion that's adjacent to your lot.
Okay, so we would essentially, if the variance was denied, be creating almost a little island of improvements.
Correct.
Okay. I saw in the packet that it's likely that access is going to be, a driveway access to Alyeska Highway is unlikely. So is it anticipated that there would be a driveway? Where's the anticipated driveway?
On Sprout.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that would be a quick right onto Gunnysack.
Correct.
Okay. So when we're talking about adding additional traffic from the subdivision development, it's probably actually accessing Gunnysack pretty quickly after.
That's the nearest option, yes.
Okay. And then it looked like in one of the pictures you provided that Jewel Mine Road, so most of for instance, Gunnysack and Hottentot all run directly into Alyeska. I can see how Sprout's a connector with regard to Jewel Mine Road and Agostino Mine Road. It looks like Jewel Mine Road is mostly single family and 2-family residential.
Yeah, so the multifamily zone district is mainly along Alyeska Highway, and then the intent was to have lower densities behind that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any members of the PTAs or community groups wishing to speak tonight?
Hello, my name is Mike Edgington. I'm I'm co-chair of the Girdwood Board of Supervisors, which acts as ex officio as the Community Council of Girdwood. I'm also the land use supervisor on the Board of Supervisors. So you have a letter of objection from GBOS in your packet, and I just wanted to give a little bit of context to that, to the narrative section. So we have a unique situation in Girdwood where we have an elected body of supervisors, which acts as the community council, and then we have a subcommittee which acts as a more traditional community council called the LUC, Land Use Committee. And in that, it's one person, one vote. Anyone from the community is welcome to join in, take part, speak, represent their own interests, and vote on any matter. GBOS is elected, so we have ethical obligations to not represent our own interests and represent interests of the community. The process we follow is that any matter like this goes in front of LUC initially, and then comes back a month later for a vote. It'll also go to GBOS, and then the second LUC meeting, the LUC as a body will recommend an action for GBOS to follow. And in nearly all cases, there's complete agreement. In this case, there was not agreement. The land use body wanted to object to the request, and there was a very narrow vote not to send a letter of... the land use committee initially voted down the granting of the variance, and GBOS did the same initially. And then when it came back with a packet, there was a request from LUC to object. GBOS originally did not agree with an objection. So we have by this time we've had 6 meetings on the topic. So we have a process where we try to seek consensus. So because the two bodies disagreed, we had another meeting last week where we went through all of the concerns and discussed it all and came up with the letter you have now. So we're in this slightly odd situation of the community in general does not want the road to 130 feet of the length of that road to be upgraded to collector standards according to the Girdwood chapter of Title 21. However, we also don't think that the proposal of just providing RAP is quite adequate. Because there's a separate conditional use process, we really have no sense of what the density or the number of units are going to be in that location. And I know the ITE, if you treat them as residential homes, has I think, a model of up to 7 peak hour trips. A lot of the property in Girdwood is either empty or not used as a single-family home, but used for short-term rentals. And you have much, much higher densities of occupation and traffic under those conditions. So again, if there were 12 units there, I would argue that perhaps you should be looking at ITE models for rooming houses or something. I'm not quite sure what the right condition would be. But short-term rentals definitely have much higher peak rows. So without knowing more about what the development is, it's very hard for, I think, us as a community to say that the RAP only is the correct solution for that area. And there are other possibilities as well. The petitioners did come to the first few meetings, but they haven't engaged directly with the community in the last several months. So that's also there's some element of concern around that as far as the community is concerned. I just want to say one last thing about the fact that we have a collector road standard for that road, which I know Laquita rightly commented is probably not appropriate. The original land use plan that led to those rules, which was written in 93, adopted in 95, had a model for the growth of Girdwood that expected us to have a population of around 11,000 by now, and we've stabilized around 2,000. So they had an intent, or at least there was a model of a much larger community with development much further along the valley and a network of collector roads around the existing valley. In fact, if you look at the map, most of those roads have never been constructed and don't exist, and this would have been a small part of that general network. So I agree that it's not a collector road. It doesn't function as a collector road, and it's not ever likely to function as a collector road. So that's it. So in summary, the community doesn't agree with granting the variance as is because we really don't feel we understand enough about the needs of the development, because we don't understand what the development is. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a couple questions. Becky Lipson.
Thank you. Was there any discussion about assuming from some community members' perspective, worst case scenario, all 12 units go in, what the objection would be?
Yes, there was, and you're going to hear it later. Okay. So I won't steal the thunder of my neighbors.
Understood. Thanks.
And Kevin Cross.
You made a statement that short-term rentals have a greater traffic demand.
That's our understanding, yes.
What is your information based on?
Observation. I live next to one.
Okay, no, it's just, I have, and I'm just speaking from personal experience, I don't want to seem argumentative, I have 10 short-term rentals, and I work with Vacasa. I know Vacasa manages a little over 70 properties.
They do.
And they say that it's a 15% vacancy, and one of their sales points is they actually produce less traffic in the neighborhoods.
That might be one of their sales points. I doubt that's a reality. We're talking about peak hour. We're not talking about averaging over periods of time when no one's there.
So I just want to make sure if I'm making a decision based on information that's provided, I want to know, like, where is the information coming from and what are the sources? Because if we're saying there's a dramatic increase in traffic, I just want to know where are we getting that information. Is it a traffic study? What does that come from? So
I would say that I'm probably less biased than a company that's providing services to short-term rental owners.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of community councils or PTAs, public groups? Any members of the public that wish to speak tonight? Please come forward.
My name is Lee Ellis, for the record, and I live on Gunnysack Mine Road at house number 243. I appreciate your time tonight. One thing I want to remind everybody is if you look at this property, there's roads on 3 sides. So that has been a definition of this entire conversation that we're talking about going to Sprout. So I'll go on from there, but I want everybody to keep that in mind. The upgrade proposed by 3MJ is completely insufficient to accommodate the increased traffic flow from a high-density development. There are no high-density developments that access Sprout Road currently. Therefore, upgrades to collector status have not been necessary to this point. Granting the variance would create unsafe traffic conditions, as Sprout is already very narrow and even worse during the wintertime. The firefighting reservoir is directly across the street. It is the only access to water for fighting fires in our neighborhood, which is a heavily wooded neighborhood. It's 17,500 gallons, and it is right next to the street. And that has not been considered in any of this paperwork or any of this project. To tack on to Mike's statement there, we deal with a lot of VRBOs in Girdwood, and oftentimes those VRBOs spill out to parking on the street, which is not a common activity in Girdwood and has created a number of problems, and the community is addressing them now. So the issue that we have with no idea of site development is that what's the parking situation going to look like, and is that going to block the only access we have to fighting fires in our neighborhood? Girdwood Fire can only fight fires for 18 minutes with their fire trucks in our neighborhood, and that fire tank is all we have. So with that, the developer has efforted to misstate public comment. Yes, we are not necessarily in favor of pavement. However, if pavement is what needs to occur in order to make our roads safe, then we would be in favor of that. Alternatives have been offered by the community. We have asked them to consider putting their access out to Gunnysack Mine Road, which is directly access to Alyeska Highway. We have asked them to reach out to the state. They have stated the state will not allow them to access Alyeska Highway. And they have also stated that Gunnysack Mine Road is too expensive, but they haven't asked us for a variance to upgrade that road. And to answer that other comment about traffic on Sprout Road, people don't just take a right and drop down on the Alyeska Highway. I personally live at the end of Gunnysack Mine Road, and I drive down Jewel Mine to Toadstool to the Alyeska Highway. We also have a train station there, and oftentimes it is used by buses for the hotel, vans, all sorts of traffic that pick up there 2 to 3 times a day. Claiming undue burden shows a significant lack of due diligence and further concerns the community that the developer is not prepared to safely or reasonably add their development to our community. It's pretty obvious that when you go into that property, we know many people have looked at that property before, that was going to be an issue. Again, it's been recommended that they consider other alternatives and access Gunnysack Mine Road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can hold on a second. We may have questions for you. Are there any questions for Mike?
Yeah.
No, it's Lee Ellis. Sorry.
I-
Jenna Welton.
Yeah. Could you finish your statement you were making?
Oh,
You went really fast, and I just didn't catch it.
I had 3 minutes. So that was, I think I was finishing with Gunnysack Mine Road. If they were to improve Gunnysack Mine Road or make some improvements to that, that would be more in tune with kind of what the purpose of this regulation is that access to the Alyeska Highway would now be improved, and that section of road would be, that would be a sensible upgrade as opposed to just upgrading this 130 feet in the middle of nowhere. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Becky Lipson.
Thank you. So you said that the parcel that's directly across from this lot 3 is, it's fire?
It's not the parcel. It's in the right-of-way. There's actually a 17,500-gallon firefighting reservoir. So we don't have fire hydrants. We don't have municipal water in that area.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm very familiar with Gunnysack Mine Road. So one of the concerns that you mentioned is parking, blocking access to that object. And I think that is certainly a consideration that staff needs to take into consideration. That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public that wish to speak tonight? Please come forward, sir.
Thanks for taking the time to hear us out. My name is Spencer Willard, last name Willard, and my wife and I live at 116 Jewel Mine, so we're pretty much neighbors to this proposed development. This development will significantly change the character of the area. It's a rural area. Condo development would be an anomaly in this area, surrounded by single-family homes. Traffic, noise, dust pollution will substantially increase on the mine roads. The appropriate access point for this kind of development should be Alyeska Highway. Second best option would be Gunnysack Mine. The worst case scenario would be Sproat Road. Actually, by using Sproat Road, the lot should be really zoned GR2, not GR1. That's another round. Let's see. Overall, the proposed development will have a negative impact on the neighborhood. This negative impact should be balanced with a positive contribution to the road infrastructure, the local infrastructure. Obviously, during this application packet, they proposed the minimum, just dropping some wrap on the road and kind of calling it good. I'm grateful for the department recommendation to not just allow that, but also on a part of the recommendation is to have the 2-foot gravel shoulders and a 5-foot separated pathway. But it doesn't really say where that pathway is going. It's going to be a isolated pathway going to nowhere, and I think Mr. Stewart kind of commented on that. So at minimum, like that pathway to meet with another path, whether it be towards the forestation kind of back pathway or actually go all the way to the Alyeska bike path. Otherwise, it's just a path for the sake of putting a path in for a small section. I suggest that, and I, for one, would like them to go all the way up to the collector road standards. I know all my neighbors don't agree with me, and that's fine. We all have our own opinions. But what the development or the developer has not done is, collaborated with the community. They asked for our input. We gave them, negative input. We voted on it. And instead of coming back around to the Land Use Committee or GBOS, like the normal process, they decided to submit the packet to the Platting Board. So it's not really appreciating the community input process. So I suggest that they come back to the Land Use Committee and then in turn back to the GBOS so we can collaborate and come to a end goal that's going to be good for them and also going to be good for the community. This is a speculative development, and they're going to try to get the most gains out of it, and I understand that, but not at the detriment to the neighbors. I suggest that the estimated funds that would be required to satisfy the collector road requirements and standards, if those aren't going to be met in full, that same amount of money would be put back into local infrastructure to basically balance the seesaw. Right now, it's heavily weighed in favor of them and their bottom line, but it's not considering the neighbors in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Spencer Williams?
Willard,
Willard.
W-I-L-L-A-R-D.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir?
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to hear us. My name is Eric Texman, T-E-I-X-M-E-N, and my family and I own a home on Sproat Road. We've lived there for 8 years. We're here tonight to discuss granting a variance to a developer who does not reside in Girdwood. This variance would allow the developer to avoid having to improve the road in front of the development to the Collector Street standards. Currently, the road is fairly quiet, and most of the traffic is from owner and long-term renters going to and from their primary residencies. I've never had a close call on that road walking my little girl or my dogs down it. It's been pretty quiet. At this time, the developer has not presented any plans or renderings of the proposed development, but based off of previous plans that were aborted by the previous landowner, along with some mentionings in the application, the development would be looking to exceed the current zoning by right of 5 units to 12 under a conditional use permit. The development of 12 three-bedroom units will produce a significant increase in traffic on Sproat Road, and an increase that will be even larger if those units are put into nightly rentals, and each of those bedrooms now comes with its own couple driving their own car. A busy weekend could equate to some 30 additional cars and places for them to park. This increase in vehicles needing sufficient parking will inevitably result in overflow onto Sproat Road, especially during times like we have now when snow storage encroaches and eliminates parking spaces. There are many instances already in Girdwood of these exact issues, and not only restrict access to neighbors, but block roadway snow removal and emergency vehicle access. Directly across the street from this development is the neighborhood fire suppression hydrant and reservoir, the only one in the neighborhood, and one that would likely be blocked inadvertently by a nightly renter who is unable to park in the development due to snow storage issues or when they need somewhere to park while pulling a trailer. This parking issue will likely be exacerbated during the construction process when contractors, suppliers, and their trailers are unable to park on the lot until parking and turnarounds are built. In past discussion, this development has been sold as adding much-needed housing to the residents of Girdwood, and while that might be true to a slight degree, what Girdwood does not need is more $600,000 townhomes that will likely become second homes and homes that are rented out via VRBO and Airbnb. It is mentioned multiple times that granting this variance will reduce the costs associated with maintaining the road. Well, that seems like a stretch when you take into consideration that once the occupants and contractors of this development need to use Sproat as overflow parking, then the road maintenance crews will run into the exact same issues they face when dealing with the cars that block plowing equipment from clearing the other roads around Girdwood, like Echo Ridge, Garmisch. These roads not only struggle with nightly rental cars blocking plow crews, but also impeding emergency services from getting through. These crews will need to spend extra time to deal with these blockages, and that time will equal money spent on other needs neglected. It is interesting to me that the petitioner for this request mentions many times at their application that they want to maintain the existing characteristics of the road, but neglect to mention the fact that they will be looking to get a conditional use permit to the zoning in order to change the existing characteristics of the neighborhood. It sounds more to me like they are concerned with changing the characteristics of the profit margin. In closing, I can't help but see the irony that all this is happening on a road named Sproat. You see, Sproat is a type of fishhook, and it seems to me that the developer of this property would like to ensure that he's not on the hook he's on the hook for as little as possible in terms of the impact this development will have on the neighborhood, all while shaking the barbs that would cut into his profitability. I'm sure as heck not taking the bait on this proposal, and I hope that the Platting Board will consider what I've said this evening and vote to deny this variance request.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions for Eric? Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any other members of the public that wish to speak? Please come forward.
Hello, I'm Leah Ellis, and I live on Gunnysack. I mostly just echo what they have to say, but in regards to vacation rentals and short-term housing and how much traffic there is with that, I don't have exact statistics on what that might be in Girdwood, but I do know that the Hotel Alyeska in the summertime, there's about 300 rooms, and they're at 100% occupancy. So that is kind of standards in Girdwood that vacation rentals are booked every single day, whether it's summer or winter. That's all I have to say.
How do you spell your first name?
Leah, L-E-A-H.
Good. Thank you. Any questions for Leah Ellis? Seeing none. Anyone else wishing to speak tonight?
Hello, thank you for taking the time to hear us tonight. My name is Melissa List, L-I-S-T, like a grocery list. I live at 116 Jewel Mine Road with my husband. We've been there for about 8 years. I just want to paint the picture because I know that you're familiar with Gunny Sack, but not everybody is. We'd love for you to come over to Girdwood whenever you can. Sproat is a busy road. It does connect to the train station. So with that train station, we have our local shuttle bus that comes through. We have numerous tour buses that come through. And then the personal vehicles that come through. They all meet on Toadstool off of Seward Highway. They come on through Jewel Mine, then they hit Sproat, and then they go on to those different roads that then spill onto Alyeska. I don't want this to be painted in a light that this doesn't affect the surrounding members, that this is just going to be a quiet, isolated environment where they will just pull out a Sproat, turn right and turn on a Gunny Sack and just flood Alyeska Highway. That is not the case. I live in front of Jewel Mine. All the summer with all the dust and the dry air, we had just dust storms coming through from all the vehicles coming through. I just don't want that to exacerbate an issue already, and I just want you to be sensitive to our voices. And once again, we are open to collaboration with this, with the petitioner and the contractor, but we just need an open dialogue, and we don't feel like that has been the case so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Melissa List? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christina Hendrickson, C-H-R-I-S-T-I-N-A, Hendrickson, H-E-N-D-R-I-C-K-S-O-N. I'm a resident of Girdwood, and I'm also the Parks and Recreation Chair on the Girdwood Board of Supervisors. Tonight, I speak as a resident. In my profession, I have permitted major resource projects and conducted stakeholder engagement in rural villages and large townships. I support the variance request. First, the applicant met the community input requirements in requesting the variance. In his packet, the applicant is committed to returning to the LUC and GBOS to discuss the development plans for Lot 3 once they are determined. However, the first step on any development on Lot 3 beyond a single-family home is to obtain a variance from the collector road standards, as noted on page 17 of the packet. The Girdwood residents that insisted upon the letter of objection will be afforded the opportunity to discuss the development with the applicant in the future, which is required under the next steps in development. Planning is hard, it's not easily understood, and nor is the public process. On February 17th at the GBOS meeting, I voiced multiple times that the applicant is not required to attend Girdwood meetings beyond their initial meetings in September and October 2019. I also voiced multiple times that Girdwood residents will have an opportunity to address their concerns during the conditional use and land use permitting process. This fell on deaf ears as emotions were high at the indignation that a potential developer had not yet presented his intentions for the community to weigh in on for this one single precursor to development. These residents' desires do not reflect the public process and is too high of a precedent for a multifamily development that Girdwood needs. Our community continues to grow in popularity. We're adding full-time positions both at the brewery and at Alyeska Resort, and our housing prices do not reflect the value of the structures or the land currently in stock. Second, the majority of the residents who voted in the recent LUC meetings did not read the meeting platting packet. For the recent LUC and GBOS meeting, only the notice was provided. Most community members did not log on to the Platting Board's public documents website to read the packet and its justifications. It was only 90 minutes into the February 27th joint land use and GBOS meeting that I witnessed Vice Chair Mary Thomas looking up and reading the packet from her phone. As she read some of the content, the audience reacted to it as the first time they heard it. Third, the applicant would be required to have some sort of upgrade in the land use and conditional use processes as noticed in the comments from traffic, private development, and planning on pages 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the packet. I recommend granting the variance that will allow this developer to continue through the public process. I am satisfied with the agency's comments on page 6, which reflects the community, and the service area manager's comments regarding long-term maintenance, pedestrian safety, and the desire to learn more about the plan for the parcel. I appreciate the comment, shall obtain a right-of-way permit for the required improvements of a 20-foot wide recycled asphalt surface with the 2-foot gravel shoulders and 5-foot separated pathway. Thank you. I stand ready for questions.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Hendrickson?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public?
Yeah, hi, good evening. My name is Mark Coates. I live at 116 Treasure Box Mine, which is on the corner of Treasure Box and Sprout. Most of my neighbors have already stated everything I could say or whatever, but again, I'm not in favor of this. I don't want to see a 12-plex on our road. We live in a nice, quiet little neighborhood. It's single-family homes. The increase in traffic, I got little grandkids that are walking up and down the street. We just don't need it. So that's about all I have to say.
And your last name again is?
Coates, C-O-E-T-S.
C-O-E-T. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? I have a Becky Lipson for you, sir.
Hi, thank you for coming out tonight. I think this was, this ties into what Ms. Hendrickson just stated. So this is a multi-step process to develop this parcel. So tonight we are not talking at all about whether it's going to end up being a 2-density unit or a single family or a 12-density unit. Do you have any specific objections to the variance request as to how much they should improve the road in front? If this goes in, how
I don't
much?
think there's enough information known yet what exactly the developers have got in mind to say whether it needs a variance or not.
So let's say, hypothetically, 12 units go in. What is your position on improving the road directly in front of this lot 3?
Well, it's stupid. It affects the whole aesthetics of the road and the neighborhood. I mean, it's just, we got a nice, quiet little road. You're going to put in 130 feet of pavement and sidewalks and lighting?
So it sounds like you are for the variance in that respect, to not improving it to the entire standard that would be required under the code.
I guess, yeah. I don't want to see a section of pavement that's, useless or whatever in the middle of our street. But I want to retain, the aesthetics of our neighborhood. That there's no multifamily homes on there. There's all single-family homes. So.
Understood. Thank you for coming out
Yeah,
tonight.
you're welcome.
Any other members of the public that wish to speak tonight? Seeing none, we will have the petitioner's representative in rebuttal. And it was 3 minutes, 3:34. That's already set. Whenever you're ready.
So I think, as we've seen, we have kind of two issues here tonight. We have the upgrades to Sprout Road, which are triggered anytime you have a development over a single family on the lot. And that's what we're here talking about tonight. A lot of the issues that were brought up as far as parking and access to the fire tank, all those things would be addressed in a conditional use permit, which is required if the developer decides to develop more than 6 units. And this is a public process, and we would have to address all of those items if that's how they decide to go with the development. But before we can get there, we need to look at the upgrades that are should be done to Sprout, and that's why we're here requesting the variance. The variance that we're requesting for the upgrades to Sprout are consistent with the area, and I'd like to also clarify that the traffic data that we indicated in our packet is for multifamily development. So that is the ITE trip generation that's associated with multifamily, not a single family development. I'd also like to clarify that the developer and myself did go down and participate in 2 meetings with the LUC and 2 meetings with GBOS, although it's not necessarily required as part of the variance because we were trying to get interaction with the community, and we at that time also indicated that we were committed to coming back once we knew what the development was going to look like and share that with them to get their input. So there is a commitment by the developer to have continued communication with the community as they move forward. We also did look at other options for connectivity besides Sproat. We looked at Alyeska Highway, which is DOT right-of-way, and they have indicated several times that they will not allow us to access Alyeska Highway. And in fact, Lot 4, which is just across the street on Gunnysack, when that replat was done, there's a plat note that restricts access to Alyeska Highway. We also looked at Gunnysack. One of the issues with Gunnysack is that it's too steep. It exceeds the maximum grades that are allowed. There's also a sewer main that is located within Gunnysack. And so to upgrade that road, you'd have to go from intersection to intersection, and it was approximately $1 million to upgrade that section. And without the upgrades to reduce the steepness, the municipal traffic engineer had indicated that she would not support access off of Gunnysack. So we really have tried to look at all the options and weigh everything that we've heard from the public as we go through this process. With that, I can answer any questions.
Kevin Cross.
I think it's important for us just to, again, what exactly is the variance you're asking? And under AMC 21.09.070, from what I understand, you're looking for, really just comes down to using recycled asphalt, a wrap, instead of pavement.
Correct. Doing the 20-foot wide wrap section with the 2-foot shoulders and the separated pathway.
And we still have swells and drainage ditches on each side, and they shall be provided to accommodate surface drainage and snow storage.
Correct. Yeah, there's existing drainage ditches and culverts, and so, and as I mentioned, anything that we design for this variance would have to go through a review process through the municipality.
And you're not asking for a variance dealing with swells and drainage ditches that shall be planted in natural gas areas or hardy perennials?
Yeah, we're not asking.
I'm just reading down the list because I think there's a lot of confusion what your variance is, and your variance is really just surface of the road.
Correct.
I mean, there's a lot of things people are like, oh, we're not going to get this, but like from what I understand, unless I'm mistaken, you're not asking for a variance from everything. It's just the wrap surface.
Well,
and so it still says here that you're still approved for buffers, vegetation shall be retained, on-street parking shall be prohibited. Like none of those things we're asking for a variance for. So am I misunderstanding what you're asking for through the chair? Aren't we just talking about a wrap surface here?
Through the chair, Mr. Cross, not exactly.
Okay, so tell me where I'm coming.
Well, the width of the travel lane is actually, I think by looking at code, you're looking at probably a 24-foot wide section with 5-foot potentially 5-foot shoulders on each side, with drainage on both sides, a bike path and a pedestrian path. So it's more about the width of the travel lanes, the width of the shoulders, the width of the drainage. So all of that is part of that. So it's not as simple as saying the surface for which we're providing here wrap, or what they're proposing wrap, is the only thing that that they're requesting.
So we're going to, did you say 24 feet?
Well, what I'm saying is the code would require 2 12-foot travel lanes, which would in turn be a 24-foot wide drivable surface with 3.5 to 5-foot wide shoulders on either side, and 8 to 12 foot. I'm sorry.
And they're proposing
That's correct.
20
feet.
And what is the current road?
20 feet.
So
I believe it's a 20-foot wide section that they intend to improve to a wrap surface.
Oh, okay. So we're staying within the 20-foot. Okay. Thank you.
Mark Seward.
To the chair, to Lakita. One more question on page 2 of the packet. It shows the collector street dimensions, and in your guys' submittal there, I found I can't quite read that dimension between the edge of the road and the edge of the walkway. But is it 8 to 12 feet? And normally that distance from between the edge of the road to the closest edge of the walkway?
You mean what's required in code?
What will be required on this project?
Yeah, so the collector standards that are indicated in the Girdwood Code is 8 to 12 foot for drainage and snow storage. And then beyond that is a pathway and landscape buffer.
Okay, that's what was clear. I can't read the numbers on this collector street dimension. The dimensional diagram is very poor. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So I guess in the packet on page 2, we have dimensions of what the collector street dimensions are. And if we look at what you're planning on doing, instead of the 10 to
It says 10 to 12 feet.
you're doing 10 feet on a side, correct?
Correct.
And then it says you need to have a 3.5 foot to 8 foot shoulder, and you're not going to have a shoulder, or you're going to have a 2 foot shoulder?
2 foot shoulders.
And then are you having a snow storage area?
So currently there's drainage ditches and some cleared area beyond the roadway surface, but it wouldn't particularly match dimensionally to what's shown in the collector cross section.
Okay. I mean,
It says 8 to 12 feet, so is there an estimate what that might be?
I don't know what's currently existing. I mean,
Okay, so
yeah,
existing.
but yeah, we would maintain the existing.
and then you've got a 5 foot walkway that you're going to be putting
Correct,
on the north side
yes.
of the project.
Yes.
How far away is this project from the trailhead at the train station? Do you know?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
And is there some other trailhead at the end of this road somewhere that you're aware of? Has anyone brought anything like that to your attention?
No, no one's mentioned that.
Okay. Staff, are you guys aware of any trail plans in the area that we should be paying attention to?
Through the chair, Mr. Walker, this pedestrian pathway is not intended to be a trail that would access a trail in the area. It's intended to be a pathway that would be with future development of other property in the area, or potential development of other property in the area, continued so to potentially access the Alaska Highway, which does have pedestrian facilities along it.
Okay. And so there's not a trail plan in place that affects this lot?
There is not a trail plan in place that affects this lot, and nor is the pedestrian pathways being proposed here intended to serve as access to trails in the area.
Thank you. Jana Welton.
Yeah, I just had a simple question. Will you show me where that fire tank is? I can't see that fire. You just kind of thought it was there.
You can see it on the map.
Staff, I feel like the community is really concerned about this fire access. Can you explain to me a little bit about at what part in this process is that going to be looked at and analyzed by the muni?
Through the chair, Ms. Welting, that's a great question. In fact, this has been a topic of discussion, I think, from the project's beginning. I think actually Laquita can probably speak to the conversations that have taken place with the Girdwood Fire Department and probably some of the plan reviewers from fire in our office. They will have to resolve some issues with the fire department. She can probably elaborate on some of those conversations that I wasn't privy to.
So if the developer moves forward with 1 to 5 units, they still have to get a land use permit. So it would come up during that process. If they do over the 5 units, they have a conditional use permit process, and the fire coverage and access would all be covered under that process as well. So there have been some initial conversations with fire, and of course, I know there was concerns with parking, and so as we go through the process to look at the development specific to the parcel, those are the sorts of things we have to address, and municipal code requires us to have so much have so much on-site parking, not only to accommodate the residents, but visitors as well. So that would all be addressed as we move forward with the development.
And during that process, it would come back to the community, for lack of a better word, community council for the Girdwood?
Correct.
Folks. Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And with that, we'll close the public hearing portion of the meeting, and the matter now rests with the board. May I have a motion to approve the request for variance from AMC 2109-070F3A? Kevin Cross, would you please state your motion?
In regards to, let's see, make sure I'm on the right page here. Case number S2125519. Oh, no. Make sure you got the right one here. I got my papers. Oh, here we are. Sorry. I apologize. I had the wrong case cover page in front of me. Okay. S12532 U.S. Survey 3042, Lot 3, Tracks 10N, Section 10. Let's see here, moving to page 5. I move to approve the request for the variance from AMC 21.09.070F3. A, B, and I, transportation and connectivity collector street standards to allow recycled asphalt pavement for Sprout Road. And B, and A, approve the variance A.
No, it's another, A's a separate motion, or the next one. B.
Yeah, that's why I didn't say B.
Good, okay. And do we have a second for the motion on the floor? Jana Welton has seconded. Would you like to speak to your motion, Kevin?
Yeah, I made this motion because mostly I just want to have open conversation about whether or not, and I'm still on the fence whether or not I vote for it, so at least now we can have some conversation. Here's what I see is that we're only talking about the section directly in front of this lot. And I want to make sure that we clear out that there's things that we don't control and we're not here to judge, and which is one, we can't judge what they do with their own property because that's not what we do at the Platting Board. We're not zoning and we're not use. So whether they use Airbnbs or townhomes or whether they're looking to make money, that's not our decision to make. That's not what we do at Platting Board. You have the right to do with your property. If your neighbor doesn't like that you can put a shed on it, you still put a shed on it. Platting Board doesn't address those issues. What we deal is with just strictly their request, which is it reasonable that they just make a variance for the improvements of the road direct that only affect the road right in front of them, not all the rest of the neighbors? And is it unreasonable to say, do I not have to put pavement because I'm going to have pavement and dirt and pavement and dirt? And do you have any idea what that's going to do to the road when they drag snow improvement through here? Because they can still build their property. If they just put pavement on it, then up goes houses. You can't, there's still, I understand there's a process. We can't say you can't build on your property. So is it reasonable that we just say that section in front of their property that accesses, and we're real quick, down Gunny Sack, is that what it is? Gunny Sack, and then turns in, can that be wrap pavement and we'll still have gutter, we'll still have a 2-foot section, not 3'6", but 2 foot, 18 inches shorter than what they could put for a pull-off area, for an area of what could be up to 5 properties. Because over 5, I understand that there is a process where they have to do this all again and seek approvals, if I'm mistaken. And I guess when I put all that in there, I don't think that's an unreasonable request. I can understand not liking what somebody's doing next door. I had that guy live next to me, okay? But is it reasonable to not have to put pavement for that 100 and some odd feet? I don't think that's an unreasonable request. So that's kind of why what are your thoughts? Team.
Becky Lipsum.
Thank you. At this stage in discussions, I also don't think it's an unreasonable request. I do think and I'm speaking to the community, although, would it be possible to remove the two posters, just so we can see everyone? Thank you. Sitting on this board and being in the position work-wise where I oftentimes present to boards as well, I can understand it's really frustrating, and the public input process, whether or not you feel like your voice is heard tonight, it truly is being heard. There are multiple stages, and we are at the stage where we don't get to describe and Kevin has a great analogy oftentimes where if you think of land use as a pizza, and I might be butchering this, but we don't get to decide what goes on the pizza.
If it's a food analogy, it was mine.
Okay. So right now we're talking about if this developer has to put the driveway onto Sprout Road, what is reasonable to develop right there? And I understand people want the driveway to go onto Alyeska Highway, and everybody else can try to negotiate with DOT to get the driveway onto Alyeska Highway. That may or may not go anywhere. Next best option from the community standpoint potentially would be onto Gunnysack. Hopefully everyone picked up a packet tonight, page 19 of the packet, which certainly is information that was prepared by the developer, outlines some of the reasons why it's not only economically infeasible, it also sounds infrastructure-wise infeasible to have this one development improve Gunnysack. So realistically, we are talking about what's going to happen on that section of land right in front of the parcel on Sprout. And sounds like some community members don't even agree that it would be to the benefit of the aesthetics of the community and neighborhood feel to be going up to code. So they are, worst case scenario, in favor of granting some portions of the variance. I do personally, and we'll get to the sidewalk aspect, think it's nice to have sidewalks, whether or not at this point they are connecting anywhere else. So that is why I'm leaning at this point towards granting the variance.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to add some findings? Mark Seward.
Through the chair, I just wanted to reiterate the zoning requirements. That's not part of this board, but we do listen to you, and we are concerned about your concerns. So don't feel that we're not, but we're regulated by what we can decide here, as was pointed out. Speaking on the wrap, I'm completely in support of the wrap and not the pavement in this area. And I'll also comment on I think the 5-foot trail. I'm not in support of that being developed at this. The main reasons is if I was walking up the roadway, I wouldn't veer off for 170 feet, walk down a walkway, and then veer back to the roadway to walk. I'm going to keep walking straight up the roadway. With the development, I think I heard that there was only 3 lots that are undeveloped, but the majority of lots are residential. The odds of there being any more 5-foot trail in that area is, in my view, slim to pretty much none. I think the intent of that 5-foot walkway was more for a larger subdivision of, say, 30 lots there with, a mile of streets. That was the intent. I don't see it being helpful in this area because it's not going to be plowed in the snow. I know the snow plows, and that's going to be buried. That's the time of year that it would be nice if all the streets had that walkway. I'd be in support of it. The road service is not going to plow and come back and plow something that's 8 to 12 foot off the road with a little blower. They can't reach it with their grader, and they're certainly not going to come in like they do in the municipality with their sidewalk snow blowers. So I'm in support of the RAP and the concerns that Lakita brought up of the edge of that pavement. It's going to get tore up, it's going to get destroyed, you're going to have a mess, and it is a danger to the grader operators of that lip that's come there in the future. So those, my last concern is that I've worked with DOT on these access driveways, and when they say that you're not going to access Alyeska Highway, you're not going to access Alyeska Highway. The DOT is very adamant on that and very strong on that, and I kind of support them in that because that is the major corridor, and we don't want more driveways on it. So the option of access in the opposite side is 0 to none, and Lakita pointed out the need. I've been on the Gunny Sack, that hill there, that it barely has an approach ramp at the bottom of the hill going to Alyeska Highway, and that would be a major undertaking to develop that road to meet the modern code designs. So I will be interested to hear what the other board members have to say on this, but I support the RAP and I do not support the construction of that 5-foot walkway. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenna Wilson.
You know, I support denying the variance for the 5.
That would be section
Yeah,
B.
that's the
That's
next
part
section.
B, that's the next one.
So
We'll
we're
deal
not
with that
talking
next.
about that yet.
Yeah.
Ugh, this is a hard one. It's hard when everybody comes out, especially all the way from Girdwood, to voice your opinions, and we tell you we're not, deciding those other factors. I think the community did a really good job outlining their concerns and also hitting concerns that matter, like the fire water reserve. And I, for one, would want to know about that just anyways. So I think hopefully next time we can just include those kind of details. But I'm going to save my comments about the second part of this until the second part. And I am going to support this motion because I do believe it's consistent with the character of the road, and I do believe that infrastructure-wise, it's just going to cause deterioration of the road if you have to pave it and it gets caught on snow plows and whatnot. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Any other findings? I'm in support of the motion on the floor also. I found it significant that the number of additional trips in the area would not be enough to bring it up beyond just a residential street status, even though it's being treated as a collector type road. I thought that they'd said there were 6 other lots that hadn't been developed yet along this road. So even if you had 12 units added to all 6 of those other lots, that we were talking about another 72 units. Even with all of the traffic that you would expect from that many being high density, you still wouldn't kick it into the next level, requiring more amenities. I think the Girdwood Public Department that will be maintaining the area has spoken. They don't want to have the road upgraded, especially since at least not without it being upgraded in conjunction with the rest of the road, again for safety issues and for the cost of the equipment. And I found those compelling arguments. With that, we'll go ahead and call the vote. Next, we have a request for and with that, the motion has passed. We have a motion to approve a variance from AMC 2109-070F3. Kevin Cross, please state your motion.
In the case of S12532 U.S. Survey 3042, Lot 3, Township 10 North, R2E, Section 10, for a variance of AMC 2109070F3. And let me read it properly. A move to approve the request for the variance of AMC 21.09070F3 through H, Transportation Connectivity Collector Street Standards, to not provide a 5-foot separation pathway on the development side of Sproat Road. The location of the pathway shall be resolved, or with a location of the pathway to be resolved with private development in the non-motorized transportation corridor.
And your motion has been seconded by Becky Lipscomb. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, so I understand this has to do with, again, the sidewalk that just is strictly and only in front of this property. And I would like to point out that we have multiple times approved these variants on other developments, specifically as stated under the petitioner's case, which was we have a 5-foot pathway that goes to nothing on one side, nothing to the other, which means it would become basically their responsibility to shovel it, but we both know it won't get taken care of generally, like Mark said, during the winter. So really it's a very limited section of road. Typically these work out with much larger developments where, or maybe it ties into a cul-de-sac. As you know, we've approved where we have access off the back of a cul-de-sac that ties into another one. But the struggle with this is I just see it as just being a dead-end section. The ideal situation is to allow them to do the variance now, particularly since we don't know what a future Sproat Road improvement might require. They may want the sidewalk when they do a big improvement in the entire road, which could be in 15, 20, who knows, eventually, when they develop those. It may end up being a sidewalk down the entire different side of the road, but we're only talking about a minute section right here. So I guess I'm moving towards approving the variance, but would love to hear otherwise.
Thank you. And is there any other findings the board would like to make? Jana Wilson.
Well, I'm actually going to be voting against this variance because, you got to start somewhere. And so while this is a small little stretch, staff has recommended that it has benefit to the community and that it, creates, pedestrian walkways and reduces vehicle conflicts. And I am going to vote against this because I think it furthers granting this would go against the intent of the subdivision regulations as it's, really working to reduce vehicle conflicts. And we already know this is a narrow road, and we already know there's kids that play on it as we were heard earlier, and that, you got to start somewhere. So at least this is 5 foot pathway in the right direction. So I'm going to be a no vote on this.
Thank you. Becky Lipson.
I'm also leaning towards not voting in favor of the variance. I think we are looking at a higher density development here. And I do see that not only the addition of sidewalk would benefit the community, but also probably the residents of that development. Kids play on sidewalks, etc. As this is the last talking point, I would just again reiterate to the community, please remain involved in the process. And there's, especially if they go for a conditional use permit, that's going to be hearings that you'll want to attend.
Thank you. Any other findings that the board would like to make? And with that, we'll call the vote. And the motion has not passed. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by Anchorage Municipal Code 21.11.304. The decision of the board at this meeting becomes final in 7 days unless a written request is submitted to the Platting Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at this hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances pursuant to AMC 21-11-503, or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision under 21.30. Are there any other persons to be heard tonight? And any board member comments? In that case, we'll stand in adjournment. It is now 8:18.